Have you ever stood in the wreckage of your own life and asked the question that haunts us all? Why? Why did this happen? Why me? Why now? It is the question that echoes in hospital waiting rooms, in empty houses that used to be full of laughter, and in the silence of a heart that has shattered into 1,000 pieces. We like to believe that if we do good, good things will happen to us. It's a simple equation, a transaction we make with the universe, or perhaps even with God. We think that righteousness buys us protection. But what happens when that equation fails? What happens when the person who deserves the world gets crushed by it instead? Today, we are going to journey into one of the oldest and most profound mysteries in human history. We are going to walk through the dust and ashes of a man named Job. This isn't just a story about suffering. It is a story about the survival of faith when the lights go out. It is a story that challenges every assumption we have about fairness, justice, and the very nature of God. And by the end of this narrative, you might just find the answer you've been looking for. Not the answer you wanted, perhaps, but the answer you need. Before we step into the land of ooze, take a moment to click that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We are building a community here that digs deep into these ancient truths to find hope for today, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. If you're ready to explore the mystery of Job, go ahead and hit the like button, and let's begin. To understand the tragedy, we first have to understand the height from which Job fell. Picture a man who seems to have unlocked the secret to a perfect life. In the ancient East, in the land of Uz, Job was a titan. He wasn't just wealthy, he was an industry unto himself. Imagine a ranch so vast that the horizon was just the edge of his property line. He possessed 7,000 sheep, drifting like white clouds across the hills. 3,000 camels, the heavy haul trucks of the ancient world, carried his trade. 500 yoke of oxen plowed his fields, and 500 donkeys grazed in his pastures. But Job's true treasure wasn't his portfolio, it was his family. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and unlike many families where inheritance and rivalry drive wedges between siblings, Job's children were bound by love. They would rotate feasts, going from house to house, celebrating life together, and hovering over all of this was Job, the protective father. He was a man of immense spiritual sensitivity. He was so terrified that his children might have accidentally sinned, or had a fleeting negative thought about God during their parties, that he would rise before the sun, build an altar, and offer sacrifices for each of them, one by one. He was the spiritual covering for his entire clan. God himself looked at Job and saw a man of rare integrity, blameless, upright, a man who feared God and shunned evil. However, there was a reality Job couldn't see. There is a curtain that separates the physical world we touch and feel from the spiritual realm that governs it. And on this particular day, that curtain was pulled back. The scene shifts from the sun-drenched plains of Uz to the throne room of heaven. The narrative tells us that the sons of God, the angelic beings, presented themselves before the Lord, and slipping in among them was the adversary, Satan. The dialogue that follows is terrifying in its implications. God speaks first, like a proud father showing off his son. He asks Satan, "Have you noticed my servant Job? There is no one on him on earth. He is perfect in his integrity." But Satan, the cynic, the accuser, isn't impressed. He looks at Job's obedience and sees only a transaction. He sneers and says, "Does Job fear God for nothing?" It's a chilling question. Satan argues that Job only loves God because God pays him to. You've put a hedge of protection around him, Satan argues. You've blessed his work. You've made him rich. Of course he worships you. You're his sugar daddy. But take it away. Touch his stuff. Watch what happens. He will curse you to your face. It was a challenge to God's worthiness. Is God worth worshiping simply for who he is, or only for what he gives? To prove the authenticity of Job's faith, and perhaps to prove the worthiness of his own glory, he gives Satan permission to dismantle Job's life, with only one rule: you cannot touch the man himself. Back on Earth, Job has no idea he has become the subject of a cosmic wager. It is a Tuesday, or perhaps a Wednesday, just a normal day. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, Job is likely sitting in the shade of his home, perhaps reviewing accounts or resting. Then the first messenger arrives. He is out of breath, his chest heaving, sweat dripping from his face. "Job," he gasps. The oxen were plowing, the donkeys were grazing, and the Sabaeans attacked. The man's eyes are wide with trauma. They took them all. They put the servants to the sword. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. Job barely has time to blink. The shock hasn't even registered when the second messenger stumbles in, smelling of smoke and ozone. Fire of God fell from the sky, he cries out. It burned up the sheep and the servants, incinerated them. Job's financial empire is collapsing in real time. But the blows keep coming. A third messenger arrives, looking over his shoulder, as if he's being chased. The Chaldeans, he shouts. 3 raiding parties, they swept down on the camels and carried them off. The servants are dead. I'm the only one left. In the span of an hour, the work of a lifetime has evaporated. The bank accounts are empty, the business is bankrupt, the workforce is decimated. But Job is still standing. He is a father. He still has his children. Money can be replaced. Livestock breeds again. As long as the family is safe, he can endure this. Then the fourth messenger appears. This man doesn't run. He walks slowly, burdened by a message too heavy to carry. He looks at Job, and before he speaks, Job surely knows. The silence stretches tight as a drum skin. Your sons and daughters, the messenger whispers, his voice cracking. They were eating and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house. Job holds his breath. A mighty wind swept in from the desert. The man continues, tears streaming down his face. It struck the 4 corners of the house. The roof collapsed. They are dead, all of them. Silence. Absolute ringing silence. Job stands alone in the ruin of his life. The richest man in the East is now a pauper. The father of 10 is now childless. The grief is a physical blow, a punch to the gut that doubles you over. What do you do in a moment like that? What is the appropriate reaction to the total annihilation of your world? Most of us would scream. We would rage. We would curse the sky. Job stands up. He tears his robe, a sign of deep, violent mourning. He shaves his head, stripping away his glory. And then he falls to the ground. But he doesn't fall in despair. He falls in worship. Press your ear to the ground next to Job, and listen to what he whispers through the choking sobs. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. It is a reaction that defies human logic. It is supernatural. In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. He acknowledged God's sovereignty even when God's hand felt heavy. But the story doesn't end there. If it did, it would be a tragedy, but a manageable one. Satan returns to heaven, and God, seemingly validated, asks, "Have you considered Job? He still maintains his integrity, even though you moved me against him to ruin him without cause." Satan, ever the prosecutor, shifts his strategy. Skin for skin, he spits back. A man will give all he has for his own life. Sure, he lost his money and his kids, but he's still healthy. He still has his own body. Strike his flesh and bones, and I guarantee he will curse you to your face. God accepts the challenge. He is in your hands, God says. But you must spare his life. And so the physical torture begins. Job is afflicted with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. These aren't just rashes. These are boils that weep and harden, turning his skin black and cracked. He is in constant agonizing pain. He becomes repulsive to look at. He leaves his house, the empty, silent house, and goes to the town dump. He sits among the ashes, the garbage, and the broken pottery. He takes a shard of jagged clay and uses it to scrape his skin, trying to find some relief from the itching and the burning. He is a grotesque shadow of the man he used to be. His wife comes to him. Now, history has been hard on Job's wife, often painting her as a villain. But remember, she lost those 10 children too. She lost her home, her status, and her security. And now she watches the husband she loves rotting alive on a pile of trash. She can't bear his suffering anymore. She wants it to end. "Are you still holding on to your integrity?" she screams at him, her voice ragged with grief. "Curse God and die. Just get it over with." It's a temptation to suicide. A temptation to abandon faith to stop the pain. Job looks at her with compassion but firmness. "You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God, and not trouble?" Even now, sitting in the ashes, scraping his wounds, Job refuses to let go of God. News of Job's calamity spreads across the region. 3 of his oldest and wisest friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, agree to meet and comfort him. These are men of status, intellectuals, theologians. They travel from their own lands to bring solace. But when they arrive at the ash heap, they stop in their tracks. They look at the creature sitting there, covered in sores and dust, and they don't recognize him. The transformation is so horrifying that they begin to weep aloud. They tear their robes. They sprinkle dust on their heads. And then they do the best thing they do in the entire story. They sit down. For 7 days and 7 nights they sit on the ground with Job. They don't say a word. They just share the space of his suffering. This is the ministry of presence. Sometimes there are no words for pain this deep, but eventually the silence breaks. And when it does, the real battle begins. Job opens his mouth and curses the day of his birth. He doesn't curse God, but he curses his own existence. "Why did I not perish at birth?" he wails. "Why is light given to those in misery?" He is asking the raw, honest questions of a man in deep depression. He wants to know why God is keeping him alive just to suffer. His friends, hearing this, feel compelled to speak. And this is where the tragedy compounds. They came to comfort, but they stay to correct. Eliphaz speaks first. He is the elder, the mystic. He relies on personal experience and visions. He starts gently, but his premise is brutal. "Job," he says, "think about it. Who, being innocent, has ever perished? I have seen that those who plow evil and sow trouble reap it. It's the law of karma. Good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people." Since really bad things are happening to Job, Eliphaz concludes that Job must have done something really bad. "Turn to God," Eliphaz urges. "Confess your secret sin, and he will heal you." Job is crushed. He knows he hasn't sinned, at least, not in a way that warrants this level of destruction. "Show me where I have been wrong," he cries. "My conscience is clear." Then Bildad speaks up. He is the traditionalist, the legalist. He doesn't care about feelings. He cares about justice. He looks Job in the eye and says something incredibly cruel. "If your children sinned against God, he delivered them into the hand of their transgression." Can you imagine? He tells a grieving father that his children died because they deserved it, that God killed them as a punishment. It is theological malpractice of the highest order. God is just, Bildad argues. Therefore you are getting what you paid for. Repent, and he will restore you. Job fights back. "I know God is just, but I am innocent. If I could just speak to him, if I could just have a trial, I could prove it. But he is God and I am a man. There is no referee between us. He destroys both the blameless and the wicked." Then Zophar jumps in. He is the dogmatist, the one who thinks he knows exactly how God thinks. He is harsh and mocking. "You claim your beliefs are pure," Zophar sneers. "But if God would only speak, he would show you that you actually deserve far worse punishment than this." This goes on for chapter after chapter. It is a grueling, repetitive cycle. The friends attack, claiming Job is a secret sinner. Job defends himself, claiming he is innocent, but confused by God's silence. He feels abandoned. He feels like God has become his enemy, hunting him down like a lion. "Misery loves company," Job tells them, "but you are miserable comforters, all of you. You treat me like a criminal, but I have done nothing wrong." Job's faith is being stretched to the breaking point. He is caught in a dilemma. He knows God is powerful. He knows God is just. But his experience tells him that injustice is happening. He cannot reconcile his theology with his reality. And yet, in the middle of his deepest despair, a diamond of hope shines through. Job stands up, perhaps shaking a fist at the sky, and makes one of the most famous declarations in the Bible. "I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth. And after my skin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God." He doesn't know how, and he doesn't know when, but Job stakes his life on the belief that God will eventually vindicate him. He clings to the hope that death is not the end. The debate eventually runs out of steam. The friends give up because Job refuses to admit guilt. Job gives up arguing with them because they refuse to listen. Then a young man named Elihu speaks up. He has been standing in the shadows listening. He is angry at the friends for being cruel and incompetent. And he is angry at Job for justifying himself rather than God. Elihu offers a slightly different perspective. He suggests that suffering isn't always punishment. Sometimes it is education. It is God's megaphone to wake us up, to refine us, to prevent us from falling into pride. He paints a picture of God's majesty, preparing the stage for what is about to happen. "Listen to this, Job," Elihu says, pointing to the gathering storm clouds above. "Stop and consider God's wonders. Do you know how God controls the clouds and makes his lightning flash? As Elihu speaks, the sky grows dark, the wind begins to howl, the temperature drops, the birds stop singing, a supernatural heaviness descends on the trash heap. The friends cover their faces. Job looks up. This isn't just a storm, this is a whirlwind. This is the vehicle of the divine. Out of the violent, spinning vortex, the voice of God speaks. He doesn't come with a comforting whisper. He doesn't come with an apology. He doesn't even come with an explanation. God never tells Job about the conversation with Satan. He never says, "I'm sorry, this was a test." Instead, God responds to Job with a questionnaire. Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? God thunders. Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. And then God takes Job on a tour of the cosmos. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? God asks. Tell me, if you understand, who marked off its dimensions? Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? Have you ever given orders to the morning, or shown the dawn its place? The questions come like hammer blows. God points to the snow storehouses, the path of the thunderstorm, the constellations of the Pleiades and Orion. He talks about the wild goats giving birth on the mountain cliffs, the donkey roaming the wasteland, the ostrich that laughs at the horse and rider. He points to the behemoth, a monster of land so strong that only its maker can approach it. He points to the leviathan, the sea dragon that breathes fire and churns the ocean, the creature that makes warriors faint with fear. Can you pull in Leviathan with a fishhook? If you cannot stand before my creatures, who then is able to stand before me? What is God doing? He is widening Job's lens. Job had been looking at his life through a microscope, seeing only his pain. God hands him a telescope and shows him the universe. God is demonstrating that the world is infinitely complex, wild, and dangerous, yet he manages it all with wisdom that humans cannot comprehend. He is showing Job that he is not a tame God, but he is a good creator who cares for the raven and the lion just as he cares for the stars. The message is clear. Job, you are criticizing how I run the universe, but you don't even know how to make it rain. You cannot handle the data required to be God. Job is silenced. He is humbled, but strangely he is also healed. Why? Because God showed up. Job didn't need an explanation. He needed an encounter. He needed to know that he wasn't screaming into a void. He needed to know that the architect of the universe heard his cry. Job falls to his knees in the dust, but this time it's different. I know that you can do all things, Job whispers. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. This isn't repentance for the sins his friends accused him of. It is repentance for his arrogance in thinking he could judge God. He trusts. He surrenders. And then the twist. God turns to Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. You can imagine them trembling. God is furious. I am angry with you and your two friends, he says, because you have not spoken the truth about me, as my servant Job has. Wait. Job complained. Job argued. Job cursed his birth. The friends defended God's justice. Yet God says Job spoke truth. Yes, because Job was honest. Job brought his pain to God. The friends brought their theology about God, but they didn't know his heart. They tried to fit the infinite into a box of karma, and in doing so they misrepresented his character. God commands them to bring a massive sacrifice, and then he gives a specific instruction. My servant Job will pray for you and I will accept his prayer. Imagine the humility required for that. These men had kicked Job when he was down. They had added to his torture, and now Job has to act as their priest. He has to forgive them to pray for them. And it is in that moment when Job prays for his friends, when he releases his bitterness and chooses mercy, that the restoration begins. The text says, after Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. The healing flows. Job's brothers and sisters return. They comfort him. They bring gifts of gold and silver to restart his economy. The livestock doubles: 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen. His business empire rises from the ashes, greater than ever. And then the cradle is full again. God gives Job 7 more sons and 3 more daughters. The Bible pauses to tell us about these daughters, Jemai, Keziah, and Karen Hapuk. They were the most beautiful women in the land. And in a radical break from ancient culture, Job gives them an inheritance alongside their brothers. He has learned that life is precious, and every child is a gift. Does this new family replace the children who died? No. Grief leaves a scar that never fully fades. But the restoration proves that Satan was a liar. God was not Job's enemy. The story ends not in a funeral, but in a celebration of life. Job lives another 140 years, long enough to see his children, his grandchildren, and his great-grandchildren. He dies old and full of days. So what do we do with the story of Job? It is heavy, complex, and beautiful. It teaches us that good behavior doesn't guarantee an easy life. We live in a broken world where the rain falls on the just and the unjust. If you are suffering today, it does not mean God is punishing you. It does not mean you lack faith. It might just mean you are in the battle. It teaches us that we can be real with God. You don't have to put on a plastic smile and pretend everything is okay. God can handle your questions. He prefers your honest pain over your fake piety. And most importantly, it teaches us that when the answers don't come, the presence is enough. We may never know the why behind our suffering on this side of eternity. We may never see the heavenly court or understand the wager, but we know the who. We know the God who speaks out of the whirlwind, the God who laid the foundations of the earth, and the God who, centuries later, would come down to earth in the person of Jesus Christ to suffer with us, to be the innocent sufferer who redeems the world. Job's Redeemer did stand upon the earth, and because he lives, we have hope that our ashes can be turned into beauty. If this story touched something deep inside you, if you are walking through your own valley of shadows, I want to encourage you, don't give up. The story isn't over yet. Please share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that they are not alone. Leave a comment below with your thoughts. How do you hold on to faith when life gets hard? I read every single one. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for more stories that bring the Bible to life. Until next time, keep looking up. The whirlwind might just be the voice of God calling you closer. Peace.